Welcome to Conversations. I'm Robin Farr. We have a terrific show for you today. You know, normally I'll have two guests on. Well, today we're having one because she's one of my favorites, and we've got lots to talk about with Jeannine Kaiser. She is a dating and relationship coach. She's known internationally. Well, she's just on the radio. She's got her own column. She's writing a book, and we're going to talk about dating and relationships. Welcome back to Conversations.
Thank you.
So good to see you.
Good to see you again, too.
It's the month of love, so we're kind of focusing in on that. All righty then. So for those who don't know, when you've got to tell the story of how you really became a dating expert. It begins with the number 100. Tell us the story.
Well, I had always had a boyfriend ever since I was able to date at 16 years old. Yep. And one of my girlfriends challenged me to stop doing that pattern and just date for fun. And then she took it one step further and said, why don't you date 100 men in a year?
And you did it. So my daughter was so really fascinated by this, and she says, Mom, that's one every 3 to 4 days, twice a week.
A couple times a week, yeah.
Wow, that must have been exhausting.
It actually was so fun because I wasn't out there looking for a boyfriend.
No.
And so there wasn't that pressure of making that great first impression, all that kind of stuff that goes along with dating. So it wasn't exhausting. It was actually probably one of the most fun years I've ever had.
Did the guy know that he was like number 24 or something like that? Did he know he was in on the goal?
You know, the guys that I dated knew that I was dating them one time.
Okay, so
I made it really, really clear. I wasn't playing games about this. This is about breaking a pattern for myself of just having a boyfriend. And it was funny because most of the guys were trying to get me to date them a second time. So I think I got a lot of the dates because they thought that they could get the second date from me.
Right, you were like a challenge for them. So what did you learn about yourself? And this probably segues then into how you help other people learn about themselves. What did you learn about Jeannine that sort of helped you get on that different path that you were looking for, and then eventually finding Mr. Right?
Well, I think we all have a level of insecurity. And, you know, I was insecure and I was always trying to impress people. I wasn't myself. I wasn't authentic. So one thing I learned was being authentic on these days because I wasn't risking anything because I didn't really want a relationship with this person.
Right.
That was one.
Nothing to lose.
And the second thing is I wasn't really clear about what I wanted in a mate. You know, I just kind of fell into these relationships and kind of just hung out in them before this. And I became really clear about what I wanted in an ideal partner and ended up married my great husband, Keith.
See, and that works. And now the two of you are doing these wonderful workshops every 6 weeks. We'll give you the website in a little bit so you know exactly where to find where these are going on. But in Pleasanton, thus far, you're selling out.
Yes, we're selling out.
And the whole point is getting out of your own way.
Absolutely.
Isn't that it? So tell us a little bit about this.
Well, we created this workshop because we've been doing one-on-one coaching for a long time, and we had people that needed more help than we could do one-on-one clients. So we created this workshop where we take 70 people through our program. And what we do is we touch on what we call the 10 keys of getting into a relationship. If you have all 10 of those keys, you're going to walk into a good, healthy, passionate relationship.
Really?
We also uncover the 10 toxic relationship patterns that people get into. We call it the rinse, lather, repeat cycle. You know, they kind of keep doing the same things over and over again, and don't see themselves in these cycles. And so we help them discover what cycles they're in and how to get out of the cycles. And the last thing we do in the seminar is that we do the 5 love myths, the things that people believe about love that actually keep them from being in a great relationship, sometimes missing the person right underneath their nose. So these are really fabulous things that we share, and it's a very experiential workshop, and people take away what they're supposed to take away from the workshop, their own personal learning.
And do you hear from the participants later and find that, thank you, that was what I needed to get out of my own way? That's wonderful.
Yeah, you know what's really fun now is we'll have people pop in on the workshop that is in a relationship with somebody.
And say,
I know,
I'm the poster child for this.
Exactly, I'm engaged, I'm this, you know. And we had this one woman just recently, she's 42, never been married, gorgeous, beautiful, great personality, never been married, came to the workshop. It was about a year ago, and now she's engaged to a guy, which I was so excited for her. Right. And she's happy, 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 happy.
She was the marrying type, but she was doing sort of something wrong.
Yep.
Is there, we've talked about this before, but is there sort of one real, I mean, I know you'll talk about the 10 in the workshops, but is there just one real bad thing that people are doing on dates that really is preventing them from having the second date, and they're clueless. They're clueless about what has happened. Is there one particular?
I would say nothing one in particular. We really go through about 10 things that people do to kind of foul up a date. But subject matters that people bring up on dates, I think it's sometimes ego stroking that people do. Things like they'll say, I've never been dumped. Little comments they make that the other person goes, oh,
Yes, yes.
You know?
Not authentic.
Exactly, not authentic, and also puts them in a place of risk of getting their heart squished as well. And people pay attention to that. No one wants to get their heart squished.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You'd think if somebody kind of kept doing something over and over and it wasn't working, that they would sort of stop doing it. But you do see people get into those patterns, like the woman you were talking about. She was obviously doing something that you know broke her of the habit, and now she's free to be in a nice relationship now.
The unfortunate thing, though, Robin, is that when you are on a date with somebody and you do something like that, they're not going to give you feedback.
No, of course not.
So, you don't know what you're doing wrong. And that's why that's where we come in, saying these things screw up the relationship opportunities for you.
I've heard a lot of times people saying, they go out on a date and it's nerves and it's all the things you talked about, insecurities and what have you. So I think people probably aren't at their best because there's this other element.
Absolutely.
But you hear so often people going right into their past relationships.
Yes.
The ex-wife or the ex-husband and what went
yes.
wrong. And before you know it, you're practically in a therapy session with this person.
Absolutely.
But that's just got to be a no-no.
That's a really big thing. And that's one of the things we tell people not to do, is what we were just discussing, is telling somebody your history. Okay, is the story that you have. It's either to get sympathy for from that person, or you're not done with it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Either way, it's not good. You want to be concentrated on finding out about that individual, but that's a common mistake that people make.
When is it sort of appropriate within the dating cycle? You're dating somebody. It's been a few times. I mean, when, if ever, does the love history come into play, and is it actually necessary?
Sometimes never. Seriously.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering that.
I mean, the reality is you're building a relationship with this particular individual. When it comes up as an intimacy in a relationship, when someone's pushing a hot button for you, is sharing with them that your button got pushed and this is your history and why that button was pushed. That's building intimacy with somebody. But most people share their story, and there's no value to the story. Yeah. It's kind of like saying, I'm putting you on guard. This guy did this to me, and you better not do it to me. That kind of a thing. And that puts the other person off, actually.
I've dated somebody before who just sort of every story that he told, it was irrelevant that there was a woman involved. It had nothing to do with it. Oh, I was in a car accident. You didn't need to say, with my French girlfriend, who I was living with for 5 years. It was like, to me, are you trying to prove that you're worthy?
Yes, and that's usually the case.
Yeah, which is a turn
Yeah,
off.
it really is. And I was just talking to somebody, a male, the other day, and the woman was telling him about how other men were sending her flowers and all this kind of stuff. And he said, that's how other people are doing it. This is how I'm doing it. If you want it, you want me, that's great.
Yes.
But this is not encouraging me.
No.
And he broke up with her because he couldn't compete with what she wanted versus who he was.
Wow. It's hard to navigate out there. It really is, which is why you have such a thriving business, is you're helping people, to stop hurting themselves.
Exactly.
We are in a very tough economic times, and I think some people will say, especially if you're sort of an old-fashioned thinker, and I can think like this too, that, I don't have really the money to be taking a woman out on a date that is impressive, or the woman saying the same thing, I just really don't have the financial ability to do it. But you're saying, it takes almost nothing to date well.
The thing about it is the thought behind whatever you do. One of the favorite things I've heard people do is take a walk around the Lafayette Reservoir, bring a bottle of wine, and just sit and just, have a bottle of wine and the beautiful sunset. That's simple. It's inexpensive. You're talking. It's a romantic setting. That's going to cost you a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an expensive date. Meeting somebody, going to, like I was reading out there about the parade, go out and have an omelet after seeing the parade. Have some fun.
And then you've got something you can talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have somebody in my world who has real trouble dating, and I've noticed that when he says to someone, let's get together, and he's not a great conversationalist, I'll say that. So when he says, let's get together, he says, let's get together for coffee.
Yes.
And the problem with that is, other than ordering the coffee, he is sort of in charge of being this fabulous conversationalist, and he isn't. And